Hey friends, thank you for clicking on this episode. If you feel it might be for you, consider joining our Patron Monthly membership. There are interesting and unique member perks. Each tier offers humble tokens of my appreciation. To learn more, check it out on patreon.com/yoga and podcast. That's patreon.com/YOGAAND podcast. There's also a link in the show notes. I hope you enjoy this upcoming episode. Welcome, friends, to Yoga and Podcast. This show highlights the science and brings the magic of yoga and mind-body practices down to earth for the everyday person to help you live your best life. I'm your host, Ashley Weber, a yoga and Pilates teacher and forever student who is oh so curious about all things yoga and. On today's episode, we will explore yoga and the path less trodden with Kate and Marc Plummer of Phoenix Yoga, based in the wilds of Southwest France. Kate and Marc teach Vini Yoga and are also self-proclaimed yoga nerds who have chosen to take the path less trodden. We will get to know them and learn all about Vini Yoga and why taking the path less trodden can be fulfilling and frankly pretty cool. I'm so excited to share with you this conversation. Let's sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode, y'all. Joining us on today's episode are co-founders of Phoenix Yoga, based out of the wilds of Southwest France. They're also self-proclaimed yoga nerds. Please welcome Kate and Marc Plummer to the show. Hey, Kate and Marc, how are you today?
We're doing good, thanks. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here. I love what y'all are doing in the world of yoga. Would you like to go a little more in depth? Like, who are you in the world of yoga?
Oh, now there's a big question.
I changed it at the last minute. I know that's probably throwing you for a loop, but
not at all. We are two yoga teachers. We trained while we still lived in the UK, and we ran a yoga business there for 10 plus years.
Yeah.
And then one day decided it would be a really good idea to relocate to Southwest France. And we've been here 4 years, still teaching, still loving it.
Yeah. Why just, not just run a business? Why not just run a business and then move a different country where you don't speak the language?
Seemed like a really good idea at the time.
Wow. So you're learning French. And so what made you want to move to France? It's so beautiful, or you just wanted a change of scenery?
Oh, we had history with France. Mine goes way back because my dad used to work here when I was younger. Marc kind of followed us along.
Yeah.
I discovered our love for France, and we always thought that we would retire here at some point. And then the UK threw us a curveball when it decided to leave the EU, and we had a choice. We could either not do it and run the risk that we wouldn't be able to do it in a few years' time, or we could throw caution to the wind and say, you know what, let's give it a go and see what happens. And it happened a lot quicker than we anticipated. We put our house on the market on a Friday. It sold on the Monday, and 10 weeks later we were in a van on a ferry with a dog sat on my knee, our entire life in the back of the van going, is this still a good idea?
Oh, wow.
At 3 a.m. in the morning, thinking, well, okay, let's give it a go and see what happens.
Yeah, well, following your passions. And so that brings me to my next question. How did you become yoga teachers? What was that journey like?
Yours was a little simpler than mine.
Yeah, I'm probably the instigator on that one, as is usually the case.
Yes.
I came to yoga by accident. I was super fit, super busy, having a whale of a time. And then out of the blue, went from being able to run marathons to not being able to walk upstairs. As I got better, my doc said, I really think you ought to be doing something healthy. Go to yoga. And I kind of snarled at him a little and said, you've got to be kidding me. And he said, no, I insist. So I kind of grumbled for a bit, and he was not letting it go. So after a little bit of nagging, I agreed I would give it a go as long as Marc came with me for moral support.
That was the fly in the ointment.
And we walked into our first class in a cold, damp, dark village hall. I wondered what on earth I was doing there. Felt like a complete fish out of water. Hadn't touched my toes in 20 years at that stage. I thought, oh, this is definitely not going to be for me. And by the end of the class was sold.
Wow.
Marc, on the other hand, not so much. I think you could possibly say that he swore blind he was never going to set foot in another yoga class ever. Which, yeah,
completely different backgrounds,
different experience of it. So he was as good as his word, and he never set foot in another class at that point. I kept going on my own and decided that I wanted to know more. And at the time, the only way really to do that was to do a British Wheel teaching diploma, which is 3 years. And thought, okay, I quite like this. No intention of teaching, just absolutely fascinated by the whole subject. And by the end of the 3 years, discovered I actually quite liked teaching, and I jacked in 20 years worth of accountancy work and said, you know what, I'm going to be a yoga teacher.
Cool.
Marc at this point went, sure, that's a good idea. And I went, no, not at all. But hey ho, let's give it a go.
We'll make it work.
We'll find a way. And at that point, I managed to cajole Marc back into a class because I needed somebody to make up the numbers.
And carry the bags.
And that was your first time back in a class in about 6 years.
Yeah.
And at that stage, it was just a case of you were coming to class to keep me company, to make sure I got home safely at the end of the night.
It was also a bit of rehab for me.
A bit of rehab for you at the same time. And we tootled on like that for a few years. I decided it'd be a good idea to do another teacher training, as you do, and discovered part the way through my course that I needed to take a couple of weeks out in the middle of January when we were at our busiest. Knew that cover teachers were really not good with my students, and looked at Marc and thought, well, he knows how I teach. He knows the students. They all know him. They're used to seeing him demo at the front when I can't. Perfect sense. Marc needs to be teaching. So we went, okay, how do we make that happen? Found him a 200-hour course. So you had a bit of a crash introduction to teaching.
Yeah.
Shadowed me for a few months in the run-up. And then I disappeared off on my course. I came back and he wouldn't give my class back.
Oh.
So that was that.
They preferred me to Kate.
Yeah. Didn't take it personally at all. So at that point, we became a bit of a tag team, and we've been teaching together on and off ever since.
Yeah.
What a journey that is, especially for you, Marc. You were like, I don't ever want to go to a yoga class again. And then fast forward to now.
Bit of a change of scenery for me. I'm used to being sort of 400-meter sprinter and bodybuilding and mountain biking, so I'm very much the sort of, not necessarily hardcore, but certainly the more 24/7 adrenaline side of things.
I see.
Yoga didn't really suit that bill at that point.
Yeah. Adrenaline and yoga, I wouldn't. Yeah, there isn't much there.
It's not an obvious match.
But it suited me at the time because I'd had a complete rebuild of my ankle, I was on my second rebuild at that point, and about to have a third rebuild, and then the first rebuild on the other ankle after a bad injury. And it was a case of, well, this actually fits in better than what I was doing previously. So it was a bit of a switch at that point. It was a good timing, should we say.
Yeah. Well, and that's your story, like how you got the journey of how you became a yoga teacher, I think is just such a good thing to hear, because everyone's journey looks a little different. And so, yeah, it's interesting. Y'all's journeys were different in that way, but you ended up in the same place. And you primarily teach Vini yoga. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We've both worked in that tradition pretty much from day one. It was, if you'd asked me when I started yoga, what kind of yoga are you going to? I wouldn't have had a clue. It was just lying down and having some nice relaxation at the end. And when we moved area, I found a new teacher. The style was a little different, and I was just utterly intrigued by it. For me, it was the right teacher at the right time. And it's something that we've both stayed with ever since. It was just an approach that made perfect sense, and it worked for us.
Yeah, I love Vini yoga. It's a great practice. We don't have much Vini yoga out where I live in Texas in USA, but it's beautiful practice. I mean, I feel like every lineage has something unique to offer of yoga. What makes you both unconventional yoga teachers? I'm dying to know. Well, yeah. So Marc is gesturing to himself.
Just take a look.
So Marc is not your typical, like, how would you describe it, Marc? Because this is all going to be an audio.
I'm 6 foot tall, about 4 foot wide and 4 foot deep. Bald, bearded. Don't look like your average yoga teacher or yoga person. I'm probably better suited to more biker, bar, and
your former life as a heavy metal singer.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I read that in your bio. Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, and so heavy metal is like, I would have guessed that. Yeah.
that would have been a reasonable assumption, I think. I mean aside from the obvious, I mean, neither of us are particularly stereotypical when it comes to seeing what we do on Instagram. We're not conventional that way, but I think a lot of what we do is not conventional either. I mean, we take it for granted because we've never known any different. But when we talk to other people who've been exposed to yoga, been to classes or teachers, we know that what we do is not the same as everybody else. Vini yoga by tradition has always been taught one-to-one. So we still teach our group classes in the same way. Although we might have a small group, everybody within that group is getting an individual experience. So we've never been ones for kind of teaching a class full of 30 people. I mean, the sheer thought of trying to juggle that many people strikes fear into my heart.
Me too. Yeah, that is a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, I did some teacher observation on one of my training courses many years ago, and I walked into a London studio and there were 45 mats in there, shoulder to shoulder, and I can't even begin to contemplate working that way, not knowing my students kind of almost inside out, and not being able to see what's different for them each time I meet them. So from that point of view, I think we are very unconventional.
Yeah, and we look at the individual and tweak accordingly on that particular day. So you may have seen them the day before, may have seen them a couple of days prior to that, but it's always very much a case of how are you at that point, And, did you wake up crunchy? Right, okay. You woke up crunchy, the other one woke up like Zebedee. So you've got to sort of alternate how you teach to fit both scenarios, which it's a challenge,
but it's fun.
It's more fun, I think.
It's more personal. It's more personalized. And that my next question was, why is it important to have unconventional yoga teachers in the world? And it sounds like that. It sounds like the nuance. Y'all are speaking to the individual needs and the nuance, and that's very important. It's important to have conventional and unconventional yoga teachers. Would you want to add to why any more to that? Like why unconventional yoga teachers are important?
I think it's massively important. I mean, if you look at kind of Instagram and the press these days, you would think that there was only one kind of yoga student, and that's so not true. And, given that I can't think of a person who wouldn't benefit from having a little bit more yoga in their life, I think it's so important that people can see that there is yoga for everybody, regardless of your background, what you can do, what you can't do, that really there is something for everyone. And the more variety there is amongst the teachers, amongst the practitioners, the more encouragement there is for other people to give it a go.
Yeah, like someone listening right now, maybe they're like a heavy metal guy and they never thought of doing yoga before, because we have people who don't know anything about yoga who listen to this show. And, who knows, maybe Marc, you might be inspiring someone right now, like who wouldn't thought it was for them until they hear this, No,
it's always entertaining for me when I host a class and a student walks in and the first thing they do is they go, "Oh, we've got one of those in the class. Oh, you're the teacher. Oh, right." Yes, this big lad can move.
Yeah.
But more importantly, I can instruct, I can guide, and I can direct you into whatever is required in a more accessible way.
Accessibility. Yeah. Diversity and accessibility, basically. I mean, that's the unconventional is what the unconventional offers. What about the path less trodden? So I love that you picked this for a title. What are your thoughts on yoga and the path less trodden in your own lives?
I think you've probably guessed just from having spoken to us for a few minutes that we don't take the easy route with anything. There's an easy way and there's an interesting way, and we have a tendency to find the interesting routes. It keeps life interesting. And at the end of the day, the Vinyasa approach isn't particularly well known. It's not trendy, it's not fashionable. It has this reputation of being yoga for people who need therapy of some variety, who need some kind of assistance. I once read a description of Vinyasa yoga that said it was yoga with bent knees.
Oh, I wouldn't have guessed that.
We don't have a great presence. We're not well known as an approach.
We're not fashionable. We're not it doesn't appeal to the masses in a lot of respects.
I see.
In a world where yoga's become very kind of almost fitness orientated
and performative, right? Instagram pictures of people doing yoga.
Gosh, yeah. It's scary sometimes, and we do have to work harder to be heard and seen and to explain what it is we do and why it's valuable. But it's such a great approach. It would be really sad if it fell by the wayside just because it doesn't make pretty pictures.
We all have a voice and something important to share with the world. Now it's easier, more than ever, to make a podcast of your very own and to amplify your voice thanks to Anchor by Spotify. I have been using this platform for going on 3 years now, and I can confidently say it is the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need right at your fingertips. Here's how it works. Anchor lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating right now, as in like today. With a single push of a button, you can distribute your podcast to the most popular listening platforms, including Spotify. Anchor is also the only place you can publish video podcasts to Spotify. With Anchor, creators can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. Yes, you heard it correctly. Anchor is free. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. I cannot wait to hear your podcast. It can be overwhelming to know how to help others during these trying times. It seems like every day there's a new disaster catching our attention, and it's hard to keep up and know how to help. The Ukraine still needs our support. The war in the Ukraine has continued, and if you are able, please consider donating to the organization Razom. Razom is providing critical humanitarian war relief and recovery to address the Ukraine's most urgent needs. To support Razom, go to razomfortheukraine.org. It's spelled razomforukraine.org. I have provided the link in the show notes. Give what you can. Hey friends! I just discovered my new favorite yoga accessory, Yoga Knees. This product really saved my knees. Yoga Knees helps solve the problem of those times in class when we kneel on hard surfaces like your yoga mat. Now your knees can also be pain-free with Yoga Knees. They are super comfortable and made with durable material. Yoga Knees is a high-quality, built-to-last product. They are a woman-owned business manufactured by women and made in the USA. When you buy a pair of Yoga Knees, $1 of the proceeds goes towards St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. Yoga Knees is giving you all 10% off your first order. Go to yogaKnees.com, that's spelled YOGAKNEES.com, and use promo code YOGAAND at checkout. The link is in the show notes. 30-day money-back guarantee. Remember to use promo code YOGAAND to get 10% off. Hey friends, let me tell you about my favorite herbal store, Earth Commons. It's more than an herb shop. They also offer gifts, body care, massage, yoga therapy classes, and more. I highly recommend their mystery herb class. I have learned so much about herbs from this class. One of my favorite things to get at Earth Commons is their bulk medicinal herbs. I like to make it into a tea, and actually right now I'm drinking lemongrass and nettle tea, and it is so delicious. Their herbal tinctures are fantastic. I use them to help with easing tension, anxiety, allergies, and even a sore throat. It's also the perfect place to find gifts for those who are challenging to shop for. They have candles, incense, natural makeup, teas, jewelry, pottery. You name it, they got it. For a limited time, Earth Commons is giving our listeners, that's you guys, 10% off your first order when you use the promo code YOGAAND at checkout. You can find them if you're in the Austin area at 813 Springdale Road, or visit them online at earth-commons.com. It's spelled EARTH-COMMONS.com. I'll link all their info in the show notes so you're just one click away. And remember to use promo code YOGAAND to get 10% off your next order. And we're back. Okay, so I think I know. I'm remembering when I went to a yoga studio and there was a Vini yoga teacher. And mistake me if I'm wrong. Was it a lot of repetitive movements, or am I thinking of something else?
It can be almost anything, is the honest answer.
Oh.
Vini yoga is just a toolbox. It says there are all of these tools within yoga, and what is important is how you take those tools out of the toolbox and you apply them to the student who's in front of you. So if they need a lot of repetitive movements, that's what you do. It could be stay, it could be move, it could be almost anything. There's no way of saying when you walk into a Vini yoga class, what you will get is X, Y followed by Z.
I see.
It just doesn't work, or it shouldn't work that way. It's because it is so tailored to the needs of the individual. It's every class should be different.
Yeah.
And it's the thing that for me, there's three things that really mark out Vini yoga as an approach. One is that we have this idea of vinyasa krama. So we always know where we start and we know where we want to go, and we get from A to B in the minimum number of steps. That's always the plan. So there's no unnecessary filler, no fluff in a practice. There shouldn't be. Occasionally you feel the need to just mix it up a little, but as a principle, direct routes. We have also this concept of function over form. So what we are doing has a purpose. There is a reason for how we do what we do.
And why we do it at that particular point. It's because of what we've seen prior to that in the movement. Yeah,
there's a reason for doing what we do the way we do it. So whether we raise the arms straight up next to the ears or we take them out to the side, could happen in any posture, but there will be something that we've seen or something that we want to achieve that means that one or other is preferable. And then the final real foundation, the one that I come back to every time within this practice, is that breath is the foundation of everything that we do. We start to breathe before we start to move. We finish breathing after we finish moving. It frames everything that we do. We are very deliberate about how we use the pattern of the breathing. It's done to facilitate the movement. It's done to enhance the effects. And the ultimate aim is that it deepens the experience of the practitioner. So from that point of view, coming back to your original point, is it lots of repetitive movements? No. Maybe.
Yeah, it depends.
It's a definite maybe. Yeah.
Sometimes repeating the same movement enhances where the movement goes to. So you may raise your arms once and it's like, oh, that felt a little bit stiff. You repeat that movement, but with a slight adjustment, or even keeping it the same, you'll get a different experience each time. And as you work with the breath will guide you in a different direction.
Oh, wow. So I could see it makes more sense now, even more so when you said 30 people in a room, like you don't want to teach that. It's so detailed. So it sounds like a no BS way to go deeper in your body if you are practicing Vini yoga correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. This is why I get a little frustrated sometimes when people say, oh, it's just therapy, because it can be incredibly intense. It can be as much of a workout, if that's what you need, as any other form or approach in yoga. But by the same token, if that's not what you need, it can also be incredibly gentle. It varies so much. And as you say, it is no BS. It is a direct route from A to B. It works on the principle we're all short of time, we're all short of energy. Why faff about? Start here, get to where you need to go in the least number of steps.
So I'm curious, as a teacher, teacher to teacher, is there a bit of intuition, or is it just lots of observation of your students? Is it both? Is it intuition and observation, both, that kind of give you more of the clarity on what to give your student?
I would definitely go down the both.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
The more, it's very observational. If you're not watching how the student is moving, and it's not just how the arms, the legs are moving, the torso is moving, it's also what expression are they pulling? Are they trying to push too far into it? Are they sort of in a bit of discomfort? But it's also, you can hear what's happening with the breath. If 30 people in the room, there's a lot of breaths there. It's picking out that one particular breath is going to be challenging.
Yeah.
But with smaller numbers, you can hear how their breath is changing. And if the body is challenged, the breath is always challenged. The breath is always the giveaway.
Yeah,
So
there's no hiding place with it.
No.
But there's still that element of just sometimes you have a gut feel. And one of the joys of working with a toolbox in yoga is that you get to take something out, you try it, and you see what happens. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. You learn from the failures as much as from the successes.
I love that. I can't help but notice all your books in the background. There's so many books, and there's binders, and now they look like yoga books, but it's too far away to read all the titles. And you define yourselves as yoga nerds, which I also define myself as a yoga nerd. But what makes you a yoga nerd?
This could be taken so many different ways. I think it's, from my perspective, it's the amount of reading, research, and practicing, and going to teachers that have specific knowledge on certain aspects. So I'm very much more anatomically sort of guided. I love the structure of the body and how it moves, and whether it's skeletal, whether it's muscular. So I'm very much drawn to people that can give me more information in that respects. You're a little bit...
I'm a little bit more in my head that it reflects our practices as well. We are different in that respect. But I think, for me, being a nerd is about being able to indulge in a love of just exploring information and knowledge just for the sheer heck of doing it. There's no expectations to what you'll come out with. You follow a path and you see where that takes you. And you never quite know what you're going to learn from something, whether you're picking up a book, going on a course, working with your teacher, there's just so much to know. It never ends. And just having the time and the space to be able to do that is just such a joy.
Or even just to observe somebody moving. Even something as daft as we watch the dog run in the garden. It's just how he's moving, and whether we can replicate that, obviously in human format, and whether it is beneficial to that individual or not. And when you get that feedback from the person, you just gain more knowledge, more information that you can then take to somewhere else, to another person. So you never stop learning.
Yeah, lifelong student. Yeah, I love being a student. I love just learning. And the more I'm sure you might feel this way too, the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. There's the whole world you don't know.
You at a level all of the time, because every time you learn something new, you realize that there's 14 directions that could take you. And it's just vast. And because of that, it's fascinating.
Well, I learned so much just in our conversation today. So thank you for sharing your knowledge. Would you want to play a game with me? It's called Rapid Fire.
Game for anything else too. I think it's probably fair to say.
Go for it.
What's the worst that could happen? We could
there's no prize given at the end or anything like that. It's just for fun. It's word association. I'll just ask you some questions, and you just kind of, and y'all will each answer, right? Your favorites, basically. So we'll start with an easy one. What is your favorite baby animal?
For me, it's got to be a puppy. It's got to be a working dog.
Okay.
I very much drawn to collies, springers, and that type of working dog. And the puppies are just adorable. And you know they're going to be troublesome.
I think that's probably a fair comment.
Yeah.
Well, given that you've stolen my first answer, I'm going to actually go with the baby owls. I'm a city girl at heart, always have been. So moving to rural France, complete shock. There's animals and things, all kinds of weird things out here in the countryside. And we're very fortunate we have an owl's nest in one of our buildings. So we have baby owls at the moment. So I'm utterly fascinated by those.
I'll have to Google that. I don't think I really know what a baby owl looks like. I'll have to look it up. That's so cute, though.
They're kind of smaller with even bigger eyes.
Oh.
Yeah. And fluff.
And fluff.
And fluff. Okay. Favorite yoga prop?
Bolster.
Oh, I'm actually going to go for a squeezy ball. I dislocated my elbow a few years ago rather spectacularly while dressed as a zombie. Long story. And I was told I wouldn't get the use of my arm back. I was actually very lucky to keep the arm as it was. But I spent 12 months doing rehab, and a little squeezy ball was just such an amazing tool. There was so much you could do with it. I'm very fortunate I've got full use of my arm back.
Wow.
Afterwards.
Would you squeeze the ball in your hand? Is that what you're talking about for rehab?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, wow.
But there is so much that you can do with it in terms of creating movement. And I've used it so many times since with others of my students that it's the thing I carry in my bag all of the time.
That's the first squeezy ball answer I've ever gotten with that prop question. So cool. I learned something new just now too. Okay, this is a tough one because I see all the books in the background. What is your favorite yoga book?
Oh, there's a tough one.
Tough, I know.
It would be a toss-up for me between The Heart of Yoga, because that was the first ever proper yoga book I read, and possibly the Bhagavad Gita for me, because that was the one that helped me to decide to jack my job in, perfectly good job, and go it alone as a yoga teacher. It has a lot to answer for.
I'll probably have to go Bhagavad Gita because it's just something it's a good reference point to go back to when you're not sure, or you just need a bit of a
an Arjuna moment.
Yeah, you want a bit of direction.
Favorite yoga pose?
Oh,
I'm gonna have to go warrior.
Thought you might. Thought you might.
Warrior 1 or 2 or 3 or.
I'm going to be cheeky. I'm going to say the whole lot because there is so much variation and modifications that you can do with them, and you can take them in so many different directions. You can explore so many different angles and rotations. For me, it's the most versatile in that respect. So that's the one I always go back to.
Nice. I'm going to say squat, just to be
awkward.
Yes, why not? Just to be awkward. It's a posture I've had a love-hate relationship with over the years, but we were very fortunate to do some work with a German orthopedic surgeon some years ago. And when he was asked what was the one thing he couldn't give up in his practice, and he said, squat. It's the one thing that will keep you out of my office.
Oh, wow. Powerful.
And I thought
that a doctor said that. Yeah.
I take that on board. So it's one of those that I persist with because I know it's good for me.
I do the yogi squat. I do a whole digestion thing because I need it. And that will never leave I will need it my whole life. So that's cool that you bring that up. I forget that is such a functional, practical pose. Well, where can people find you online and in the world?
Oh, well, we've taken to lurking in all kinds of strange places.
Yeah. We will apologise. They're not always the odd bits that we give out.
Yeah, we're on Instagram under Phoenix Yoga. We are on the interweb under phoenixyogafrance.com. We are also on Facebook as Phoenix Yoga France.
Yeah.
And we've even been known to appear on YouTube every once in a while. If you look for Phoenix Yoga, we're lurking in there, grinning at you like we usually do.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for playing Rapid Fire. That was really fun. And everything you mentioned, I'll link in the show notes. So you're just one click away from connecting to Kate and Marc. And Kate and Marc, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was so good to chat with you today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. It's been an absolute blast. We've loved it.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed today's episode all about yoga and the path less trodden with the knowledgeable Kate and Marc Plummer. Be sure to connect with both Kate and Marc. All their info is linked in the show notes, so you're just one click away from connecting with them, and I highly recommend that you do. Let us know how you like the episode. We love hearing from you. Please email us at yogaandpodcast@gmail.com. The and is spelled out YOGAAND podcast@gmail. Please follow us on Instagram, also at Yoga and Podcast. We would really appreciate it if you could rate and review the show. It's what helps us reach new listeners. And while you're at it, if you could rate and review all the other podcasts you like too, this small act is priceless to podcasters and can really show your support. And it takes like a minute to do. So the next time you're in line somewhere or you're waiting, just use that minute to review us. Thank you kindly. Thank you in advance. The theme song is performed by Ali Holder. Graphics, guest booking, and media by Bentley and Chloe Productions. Thank you for listening.